Oh boy. Okay, so yes. So I actually checked out episodes 5 and 6 together. Just the whole doing one episode at a time thing. It was kind of getting, I know the video's a little lengthy, so yeah, let's try to speed things along because I like to ramble. So squeezing 2 of these into one here. Here we go. Episode 5, Make America Exotic Again. So Jeff comes in, he steals the zoo out from underneath Joe, and right away he fires like half the staff. He also brought in his own handyman, a guy named Alan, and actually kind of starts making a lot of improvements around the zoo. They built a new alligator house, they did all this kind of neat stuff, they're like making things nice around the place. He even found a guy in town, a man by the name of James, who owns like some strip clubs and bars and stuff like that, to be another financial backer for things, and even builds a pizzeria, so now you can sit out on a patio and eat pizza right with tigers next to you. What's Joe doing all this time? Well, he decided to run for president. Of course he had zero chance of winning, but the campaign was fantastic. I mean, obviously the whole thing was a publicity stunt from the get-go, but it would have been great if it had worked. I mean, instead of Trump, if we have, you know, Joe Exotic President Exotic. I mean, just, oh God. When, of course, that did not pan out, he decided, let's take things down a notch, and I can at least run for governor.
I mean, if Jesse the Body Ventura and Arnold Schwarzenegger can be governor, then surely Joe Exotic can be governor too.
And of all people, his campaign manager was the manager at the ammo counter at Walmart, who, believe it or not, is probably like the only normal human being and probably the most genuine human being that in this whole show. He just seems like a normal guy who actually like cares about people and cares about the cats and cares about Joe, and it just seems like a legitimately good guy. So what was the campaign like? Well, you know how a lot of candidates, you know, they gotta like shake hands and kiss babies, and like they've got their little flyers and their little buttons and their bumper stickers and things like that. Yeah, Joe didn't have that. Instead, he gave out condoms because you're screwed if you don't vote for him. But a condom is for when you... So is he saying that the condom is if you don't vote, or... How is... What? More sirens! During all of this, of course, Joe kind of seems to forget about the zoo a little bit. And Jeff decides, you know, why am I paying for you to run for governor? And he kind of pulls the plug on the funding for the campaign. Well, at this point, Joe starts getting really paranoid, thinking everybody's out to get him and all this stuff. He's even shooting a campaign video inside one of the tiger pens, and is convinced that somebody put something on his shoes that made the tigers want to attack him. Simply, basically, because the tiger smelled something on his shoes, became fascinated with it, and like drug him off. I mean, he was fine, but kind of scary situation there for a second. Not only was there a lot of paranoia, but apparently a lot of meth started making its way into the zoo and around the zoo. Can you imagine tigers on meth? There's a horror movie waiting to happen. Unfortunately, the person who was affected most by this whole meth thing was Travis. Travis, of course, I don't remember if I mentioned Travis now, but he was the second husband of Joe. He had 2 husbands. There was John and Travis. As they often do, things kind of start crumbling all at the same time, and Joe's marriages weren't immune to this. Turns out, both of his husbands were straight. Travis was basically sleeping with every woman employed by the park, and was also going to James's strip clubs and sleeping with all the girls there, and all sorts of just really getting around. And meanwhile, John also was not only dating the girl that like worked at the gift shop or the front desk or some, I forget where she worked at, but she worked at the zoo, and actually got her pregnant. And they decided they were gonna get married. Joe was completely crushed by this and started getting really paranoid when it came to Travis. He like wouldn't let him leave the grounds or anything. You can't go into town, you can't go visit your brother or whatever, or your mom and all this stuff. I might actually be kind of mixing the 2 of these together, but he wouldn't let him leave, that's the point. And meanwhile, Travis, while saying, you know, I'm not gay, but I do care about Joe, obviously. I mean, I married him, but he was saying, like, you know, he would go to Joe and say, like, I've got, you know, all these feelings and all these problems and things, I really need to talk to you, but Joe wouldn't listen for more than like 5 seconds and he'd just walk away. So Travis really gets off on the meth and starts like carrying a gun with him everywhere, and he's like pointing it at people and joking around like, like would even wake people up with the gun in their face. So no one thought anything of it whenever he walked into a room and stuck a gun up to his head until he pulled the trigger. He was standing underneath the camera, so they didn't actually actually like catch this on camera, but they caught everyone's reactions in the room, including like the campaign manager guy and all this stuff. So yeah, he killed himself. Well, now Joe is completely alone, and he loses it. To add to everything falling apart, Jeff and James both decide, they start talking and they decide, we hate Joe. Let's just kind of move our operations over to Vegas. And that whole thing with the Tiger Cubs and the hotels and all of that stuff would actually end up getting Jeff in some trouble. Thus begins the rolling of the ball downhill. And Joe just kind of, slipping into his well of madness and sorrow and whatever. I don't know, I'm being dramatic here. Meets a guy named Dylan. Now, to be fair, Dylan seems like a genuinely good guy who genuinely cares and loves Joe. But 2 months after Travis's death, Joe is now getting married to Dylan and actually invites Travis's mother to the wedding. She shows up and she says it's just her, like the cameraman and like a flower girl, and that's it. And like the whole thing was just so that it didn't look bad on Joe for him to be marrying somebody else. But all of this was basically just because Joe was losing it. Not only losing it, he also lost the race for governor. Go figure. But it actually turns out that maybe Joe's paranoia wasn't too unfounded, because they actually found a microphone attached to the roof of the building, like kind of hanging over where the gift shop would be, where people enter to go to the zoo. They find a little antenna microphone thing, so like they're being spied on by somebody. Which leads us into episode 6, The Noble Thing to Do. And it kind of bothers me. I mean, at least at this point, they haven't really gone into where that microphone came from. I mean, they suspected that maybe the FBI was investigating him, and I mean, they do start investigating him, but they never said, was that them, or was that somebody else, or whatever. So I don't know. Well, Jeff, it turns out, has a violent past. Not only was he a known con man, but he's also a felon. He had beaten and strangled his wife, his ex-wife, and had been caught taking tiger cubs into public places like hotels, and he got arrested for that. Well, Jeff basically gets off with a slap on the wrist, and he's heading back towards Oklahoma, back to the zoo. On the way back, he's actually trying to check over some financial things for the zoo, and turns out that Joe had locked him out of the online banking thing, so he decides, I'm just going to stop in at the bank in Oklahoma. Well, while he is there, the clerk tells him that Joe might be in some trouble because the FBI has been looking into their finances. Dum dum dum! The plot thickens. Turns out that Joe had actually forged Jeff's name on like a whole bunch of checks over the last 12 months. That's just a little it's a little illegal to do that. Ever. So basically Joe has, now been embezzling money from the company that he used to own and now is running from his business partner / cohort / guy that saved his butt financially. So Jeff confronts Joe and they have this giant screaming match, and Jeff, there are too many people with a name starting with J in this show. It makes it really confusing when you've got Joe, Jeff, and James are like 3 of the main guys, and then there's John, and then I think there's another John, and then I'm just saying, get more diversity with your name lettering. So basically, realizing that he's screwed and he's probably going to be, brought in on charges from the FBI, Joe decides, you know what, I'm just going to move. How about that? That'll solve everyone's problems. I can run away. I can just get out of here. I'm just going to move. And he does, but not before kind of taking all of the records, all the hard drives, all the files, everything that shows everything that's ever happened here, especially when it comes to finances and stuff, takes it out in the field, throws a bunch of gas on it, and sets it on fire. Then in the middle of the night, he shows up with a truck to pick up some of the cats, and he takes some of them off to California, and apparently a couple of them even came here to Branson, so hey, that's kind of cool. There's a tiger sanctuary just a couple miles right outside of town. I've always wanted to go there, but there was even a couple times during this episode that I thought maybe this was in Branson, but they say they weren't. I don't know. I don't know. And this would be the last day that Joe was actually allowed on the park. Jeff actually said that if he saw Joe on the property again, that he would shoot him. And Joe went off to some undisclosed location. Like, even his closest friends had no idea where he was. Somewhere in southern Oklahoma is all that even the filmmakers that made this docuseries, they knew that he was in southern Oklahoma, and that's all they ever said. The next day, Jeff actually holds a staff meeting with everyone, and he tells them, this is what you're supposed to tell people if anyone asks, that Joe has retired. He tells them all that Joe is in huge trouble and that the FBI is going to be taking him down. Anything that had his image on it anywhere in the park, they took it and they burned it. So at this point, Joe is officially no longer associated with the park, the zoo, at all. He just has his little handful of tigers in southern Oklahoma, and that's it. Well, it turns out that the word on the street is that Joe had tried to hire a hitman to kill Carol. And yes, he did talk about killing Carol pretty much constantly, but talking and doing are two totally separate things. Yes, Joe is a person who doesn't know when to shut up. I think I've said that before. But he's not completely brain dead either. And it would seem like if you talked that much, especially like on your own television station basically, constantly about killing somebody, that if they were to end up dead, you're gonna be the main suspect. Regardless of any evidence, you're who they're coming after. So as much as he talked about it, even if he wanted to actually do it, I don't feel like he ever actually would. And Jeff and James, John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt, too many freaking J names, are the ones that kind of got this rumor started. You got Jeff, I mean, he's a felon, we talked about that. Well, you remember Alan, the guy that Jeff brought on as a handyman? Well, he too is a felon, who's got the little teardrop tattoo thing under his eye. And in case you don't know, that usually means that they have killed a person. And Alan had recently disappeared from the zoo. James, meanwhile, he is not a felon, but is also considered to be a pretty big con man, and actually sold a stolen Hummer to one of Joe's best friends. But charges on that hadn't come up yet, so for the time being at least, James, not a felon. So James and Jeff get together, and they kind of have a little chat about Joe. And they're like, you know what we should do? We should just call up Carol and offer to give her Joe's head on a silver platter. So they call, and well, seeing that the number is from the local area, Carol decides not to answer the phone. But then she gets a text message basically telling her, you know, hey, we got all this dirt on Joe. He tried to kill you, so we should talk. But, well, Carol, being a not stupid individual, calls the authorities instead of calling them back. So the next day, James receives a phone call from the Fish and Wildlife Administration. Department? Fish and Wildlife Department? I don't know. Basically, because there's animals involved, it didn't go to the FBI, it went to them. And James, being the slimy little Louis Anderson looking guy that he is, decides that he's going to become a confidential employment. Decides that he's going to become a confidential informant for the authorities. What a piece of crap. Like, really, I mean, if you watch this thing, I hate this dude. I want to punch him. Yeah, I've seen some liars and some low people in my life, but these two, Jeff and James, like, just how anyone would ever believe a word coming out of either of their mouths is just, oh God. So James tells them that Joe had hired Jeff's right-hand man, Alan. Like, seriously, are you keeping up with even like half of these names at this point? Because believe it or not, there's going to be more names here in a little bit. To be his hitman to kill Carol. He claims that they actually all sat there in the office and even like pulled up on Google Maps this path that Carol takes every day when she's out riding her bike, and that he had planned out, like, you know, you could stand in this bush here and you could shoot her as she comes by, and you could stand here and do it from here and whatever. So they actually sat there and planned this stuff out. I mean, the thing is, though, they sat and talked about killing her all the time. And the feds basically tell Carol that a hitman is actually on his way to her now. Because, you know, that won't, like, freak a person out and make them not go on the path that's going to, you know, whatever, help them catch the dude. But Alan, as previously mentioned, had disappeared and now isn't even, like, responding to anyone's phone calls or text or anything. But after a while, they finally do manage to get a hold of him, but he's not in Florida where Carol's at. He's in South Carolina. So their whole plan is now out the window, because he's not going down there to kill Carol. He went back home to South Carolina instead. More sirens. I just hear this like long before I heard the sirens, the dogs were howling. That was a beautiful impression, I know. Maybe it's because we're quarantined, so I'm like home more often, but I have heard so many sirens go by every single day since this thing started. It's really creepy. So now their whole plan is derailed. Now apparently, when hiring a hitman to kill someone, you haven't actually broken a law until money changes hands. So James decides that he's going to bring in this Fed to dress as just like a normal guy, go pick up Joe, and be like, I found this dude, he's gonna be your new hitman since Alan ran out on us. And Joe fell for it. So they offer like this ridiculously small amount of money, and Joe's like, yeah, I'll pay for it, we'll get this done, we'll finally kill her, it's all gonna be over, and yay, go team. But he never pays the guy, because I don't know if you remember this whole thing, but Joe's kind of broke at this point. So now they're like, well, what do we do? More freaking sirens, are you kidding me? It's so hot in here. So now they're all kinds of frustrated. So James goes to Jeff and he tells him, hey, I'm working with the feds. And Jeff is like, are you nuts? I can't believe you're screwing me over here. And blah, blah, blah. And James is like, I said, Jeff. If I never hear the letter J. But Jeff is like, I see this as kind of a bit of an opportunity. Let's work together and we can really throw Joe under the bus. So Jeff gets Alan on the phone and basically gets Alan to kind of say, yeah, Joe offered me $5,000 to go down to Florida and kill Carol, but he only gave me $3,000. He never gave me the other $2,000, and I'm supposed to get another $5,000 after I kill her and all this stuff. Never paid me the whole amount that he's supposed to pay me, but yeah, I was gonna do it anyway. But on the way there, I guess I got cold feet, I chickened out, and I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go back home to South Carolina. Not come back to Oklahoma. I'm going to just move. I'm already halfway there. I might as well just uproot and move my whole life back home, because that makes sense. But seeing it as the opportunity, Jeff's like, I'm in... But seeing it like the opportunity that it is, Jeff is like, I'm in all this hot water back in Vegas. I can give them Joe, and that'll get them off my back. So all this time, Joe has been living out in seclusion in southern Oklahoma. But realizing that now, the things are really starting to heat up because, he's caught wind of all of this stuff that's happening. He uproots again, and he moves out of the house that he was living in. Well, he starts posting photos on Facebook saying that he's in Belize. But James, seeing these pictures, he's like, well, that's not Belize. That's Florida water. I know Florida water anywhere. Which, is that like a thing? I mean, is there something about Florida water that's just different? What? Do I want to know? But it turns out that he was correct. It wasn't Belize. It was Florida. They finally catch up to him, and Joe is arrested. Jeff, meanwhile, decides that he's going to shut the park down and start fresh somewhere else. And that's it for episode 6. So, yeah. I guess it's maybe the trial or something, but, I don't know what episode 7 is going to be about. So, I'm going to go find out because there's only one episode left, and I can't wait to see how this whole thing is going to end because, like I've said before, it's very much like a TV show. It's got ups and downs. You can tell, like, this is what would happen in this episode, and this episode, and this episode. So many plot twists that I can't wait to see how the season's gonna end, What's gonna be the big... Is there like a cliffhanger for season 2? We're about to find out. Be right back.